to Ukraine, and in 1720 the Russian parliament unanimously voted on a decision to allow Russian troops to enter the Ukrainian territory, officially starting the war. As of this moment, we are officially in a state of war with Russia. The Russian forces has been mobilizing for the past few days, and we have seen an active movement of Russian troops in Crimea, even though Russia is calling that regular military exercise, not connected to the current situation in Crimea. This morning, Russian President Putin spoke to Prime Minister Britain Cameron, and he officially declared that the movement of troops in Crimea is a planned exercise, nothing to do with the invasion of Crimea, and that the operation has been planned a long time ago. However, as we can see, only a few hours later, he has requested for Russian troops to be officially approved for officially approved operation in the Crimea. The referendum on Crimean independence was brought forward to the 30th of March instead of 25th of May. As we know, the illegitimately called Supreme Council of Crimea has declared the referendum on the Crimean independence. It was supposed to happen on 25th of May, but now it's been brought forward to 30th of March. In addition, there was a special police unit created, and it is only accountable to their Crimean Supreme Council. Klitschko has called for a full military mobilization and the termination of the so-called Kharkiv Agreement, which were signed under Yanukovych. The Kharkiv Agreement was signed in 2010, and it contained the articles about the prolongation of the Russian fleet, the Russian Black Sea Fleet, and according to the agreement, it was supposed to stay there until 1925 instead of the former date of 2017, when it was supposed to leave the territory of Ukraine. Klitschko has also called for Ukrainians and Russians who live in Russia to protest against the war declared by Putin today. For your information, I would like to give a few facts about what currently is the situation in Crimea in terms of the pro-Russian support and what role the Crimea plays in the Ukrainian economy, so you can understand the full extent of the situation and the full consequences for both Russia and Ukraine and the Crimean population. The current demographic situation in Crimea is that officially 56% of population are Russians, and a further 13% are Crimean native population called Tatars, who were deported from Crimea in the 50s, and they were only allowed to return after Ukraine gained independence. So the Ukrainian population in Ukraine is not a majority, and they are really not calling the shots in the Crimean politics. In terms of the self-sufficiency of Crimea, they are only 34% self-sufficient according to economic reports, as they heavily depend on Ukrainian water, as Crimea doesn't have their own water resources, and they are fully dependent on their agriculture for the water to be supplied from Ukraine. There is also a large number of pensioners in Crimea, and that calls for a question: what do Russians really want? As it will take an enormous amount of financial resources to support the Crimean population, something that Russia currently doesn't have, as they are going through the financial crisis and their state reserves are almost depleted. In addition, we're questioning their Crimean support for Russian invasion, as we do not see numerous demonstrations in favor of invasion. We only see a few pro-Russian demonstrators, in addition to obviously Russian troops that are present in Crimea. And as Yatsenyuk, current Prime Minister, claimed today that Well, there is no direct competitor to the Crimean sea resorts, which is Sochi, which received a state-sponsored infrastructure for the Olympics, and it will now be directly competing with the Crimean resorts, something that probably the majority of Crimean population doesn't realize at the moment, that current situation will be disrupting the holiday season, and that will obviously be a good reason for the tourists who were previously visiting Crimea to go to the resort of Sochi, which is currently more equipped to receive tourists. About the international reactions to the events today, we have not heard much from the European Union. Hopefully this is due to the fact that they're currently discussing the response. However, we have heard the United States promising to look into possible consequences for Russian interference into Ukrainian affairs. And the Senator McCain today proclaimed that Russia is willingly going for a confrontation, and it looks like they want the return to the Cold War era. We have heard some claims that Obama has promised not to visit the summit in Sochi if Putin continues the occupation of the Crimea. We have also heard the Russian ambassador today telling the EU that there are no Russian troops on the peninsula. So it is hopefully understandable for the world community what kind of game is being played, as we can clearly hear one set of facts are being presented to the international community, and the opposite is being done by the Russian government and the Russian president. In addition to the events happening in Crimea, we have had several pro-Russian rallies happening in eastern and southern regions of Ukraine, mainly Kharkiv, Donetsk, Odessa and Dnipropetrovsk. In Kharkiv we have seen about 1,000 pro-Russian protesters armed with weapons attacking the peaceful protesters who were grouped near the Kharkiv administration, and as a result 97 people has been admitted to hospital. Pro-Russian protesters who were not harmed by the police made the peaceful Maidan protesters gather in circle and sit on the ground while they have encircled them. So a similar rally has happened in Donetsk. There were about 1,000 people in the central square, everyone holding Russian flags, and were calling for a referendum on the belonging of the Donetsk region to the territory of Ukraine. There was a pro-Russian rally in Odessa consisting of hundreds of protesters, pretty much similar to what was happening in Kharkiv and Donetsk. It's reportedly they are the same people who were working with the police and helping to quell the peaceful protests that we have had in recent weeks, as most of the protesters seems to be young male, armed with baseball bats and traumatic weapons. We have also seen a pro-Russian rally in Dnipropetrovsk today, which has pretty much happened along the same scenario, as well as several pro-Russian protesters tried to ruin the memorial which was erected in honor of the people who've fallen during the peaceful protesters. So we can see quite barbaric actions, and number of acts of vandalism were reported. However, the police seems to be standing aside and not interfering, which is quite surprising to see, as we currently have a new police minister who's supposed to take some actions in regards to current events. However, we haven't seen a single arrest in the eastern or southern regions, so there are obviously a number of questions to the Minister Avakov, who is currently heading the ministry, and we're hearing some strong words from him. However, no actions whatsoever so far. All the protesters who are armed and attacking peaceful protesters, they have not been arrested by the police. They have not been impeded in their actions, and they basically are allowed to do what they want. So hopefully we will see some reaction from the current police minister. I think this is all for tonight. We will be with you tomorrow at 8 o'clock as usual, and hopefully we'll have something positive to report. Thank you very much. Good night.